At this point, it's practically an axiom that conservatives have poor media comprehension skills. Pretty much everyone other than conservatives acknowledges that. And I'd bet even a few of the sharper conservatives, I have no idea who they might be, I don't know of any, but surely there must be one or two out there, are embarrassed by how dense most of their ideological brethren seem to be when it comes to understanding the books, TV shows, films, and music they consume, even the ones they like. In fact, at times, it seems, especially the ones they like. I talk about Star Trek a lot on this channel, and I've done entire videos devoted to the baffling phenomenon of conservative Trekkies. How, I am continually compelled to ask, can conservatives love a show that has spent nearly the last 60 years telling them that they are wrong, that their policies and beliefs are largely the cause of society's problems, and that society will only truly advance once it embraces things like diversity, inclusion, tolerance, equality, multiculturalism, and internationalism, things which most conservatives vehemently despise? The answer, in many cases, seems to be that they interpret the show through their right-leaning worldview and see it as actually reflecting their own values. And, though I think they are misinterpreting the show to the point of willful distortion, if you squint and tilt your head to the side, you can kind of see how they get there. Favorite conservative themes like individual liberty, militarism, and the inherent superiority of Western civilization, represented by the Federation, are certainly present in Star Trek. And conservative Trekkies have managed to convince themselves that those themes are actually what Star Trek is about and tune out all of the progressive stuff. But a recent tweet by film critic Darren Mooney, who writes for The Escapist, reminded me of another explanation. In the tweet, Mooney shares a screen grab of a tweet by an especially odious and typically clueless right-wing dipshit who declares that he has recently rewatched every episode of Star Trek from the original series through Enterprise and determined that it only has a political message in about 15% of those, and concluded, therefore, that actually it's not accurate to say that Star Trek is political, merely that Star Trek is sometimes political. Like I said, he's a dipshit. However, in this particular instance of his dipshittery, he demonstrates another answer to my question. How can conservatives be fans of Star Trek? Very often, it's not that they interpret it as being conservative too, it's that they interpret it as being apolitical. As Darren points out in his tweet, this is, to say the least, a facile and poorly informed take, extraordinarily so, given that it's in response to Star Trek, one of the most blatantly and inescapably progressive of all popular media franchises, but it provides a useful jumping-off point for what I want to spend most of this video talking about, because conservatives don't just do this sort of thing when they watch Star Trek. They do it when they watch or read or listen to pretty much anything. If you pay even a fraction of the attention to pop culture and politics that I do, you can probably think of at least one or two examples of right-wing politicians or commentators who are big fans of works and or artists that would seem to be incompatible with their worldview. Chris Christie is a huge Bruce Springsteen fan. Ted Cruz is a fan of Star Trek and The Simpsons. Paul Ryan loves Rage Against the Machine. How does that even... Okay, I just need to pause there for a minute because right-wing Rage Against the Machine fans baffle me even more than right-wing Trekkies. The lyrics of the lead single from Rage Against the Machine's debut album say, "Some of those that work forces are the same that burn crosses." What forces does Paul Ryan think they're talking about? The fucking G.I. Joe Ninja Force? In this case, I think the most likely explanation is that Paul Ryan was in his early 20s when that song, Killing in the Name, was first released. And as an Ayn Rand reading young Republican nerd with a chip on his shoulder about big government bossing him around, Ryan heard the line, "Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me," decided it was speaking for people like him, and never felt any need to revisit that interpretation for the rest of his life. which makes sense more broadly speaking as well. Strong aversions to intellectual curiosity and self-reflection are hallmarks of conservative thinking. It potentially explains how a Republican and lifelong New Jerseyan like Chris Christie can be an outspoken and devoted lover of the music of revered New Jersey hero Springsteen, music which frequently gives voice to the poor, the marginalized, the immigrant, the working class, all regular targets of rhetorical, economic, and often physical violence at the hands of conservatives. Hell, Born in the USA, one of Springsteen's most iconic songs, is about how a Vietnam vet can't find a job in the hollowed-out, trickle-down economy of Ronald Reagan's America. Meanwhile, in 2011, Chris Christie gave a speech at the Reagan Library where he said that his favorite story from the Reagan presidency was the time Reagan fired thousands of air traffic controllers. That's okay, Chris. Lots of people don't listen to the lyrics. Apparently. But it doesn't work in all cases. Not every instance of a right-winger epically missing the point of a creative work can be chalked up to them imprinting on it when they were young. For example, earlier this year, Ben Shapiro, right-wing podcaster and professional know-it-all twerp, was roundly and rightly mocked for his expert analysis of the almost universally acclaimed third episode of HBO's The Last of Us. That episode, Long Time, shifts its focus away from the series' leads, Joel and Ellie, to tell the story of Bill and Frank, two men who find each other and build a life together in the midst of the post-fungal zombie apocalypse world in which the series takes place. It's funny, it's beautiful, it's heartbreaking, it's exquisitely written and shot and acted. It's one of the best episodes of any TV show ever, unless you're Ben Shapiro. And for your sake, I hope you're not, because if you are, it means you're a huge piece of shit. And also, you have the media literacy of a blown light bulb. According to Ben, who dubbed the episode Brokeback Zombie Farm, the problem with Long Time is that it doesn't have any zombies in it, and it has nothing to do with the rest of the show. This example is interesting because it actually takes us beyond the scope of politics and demonstrates that lots of conservatives just have no idea what's going on in general when they watch TV or movies. Ben doesn't just miss the point of the show politically speaking, he misses the point of the show, period. And in multiple ways. And I'm not talking about, hidden themes or subliminal messages here. I'm talking about things that anyone who watched the episode and had even a basic level of critical awareness and appreciation would pick up on. This video is not a critical analysis of Long Time or The Last of Us as a series, but just briefly, as anyone who has ever seen a zombie movie before ought to know, zombies are never just zombies. At least not in good zombie movies. They're not. Zombies are almost always representative of something or present as a device to force the characters into situations that allow the story to bring out elements of the human experience that the storytellers want to explore. Just because The Last of Us is a zombie show, that doesn't mean every episode needs to be an hour of Joel and Ellie running from zombies or shooting zombies or whacking zombies with baseball bats or axes or whatever. The mere facts of the zombies and the fungal outbreak that causes the zombies are all we need to know for the story of Long Time to make sense. And that story is about how Bill, a reclusive survivalist who initially sees the pandemic and the resulting collapse of society as a good thing, finds something he wasn't looking for and could never admit that he needed. His relationship with Frank, a closeness with another person he never had, never allowed himself to have, before the world ended. As for Bill and Frank's story having nothing to do with the rest of the show, Ben apparently missed the point, or lacks the thoughtfulness and curiosity to take a few seconds to figure it out, that Bill's story parallels and foreshadows Joel's. Bill even makes that explicit in his farewell letter to Joel, where he writes, "People like us exist to keep them," meaning the people they love, "safe. And God help anyone who gets in our way." And you might say, well, okay, but if you're watching the show and you're not already familiar with the general arc of the story, which is adapted from a popular video game, you might not automatically assume that Bill's story foreshadows Joel's story because it's only episode 3 and you don't know where Joel's story is going to go yet. Fair enough, except, hey, if you watch a TV show and it's a well-done show made by people who seem like they know what they're doing, which even Braindead Ben acknowledges, describing the episode as, quote, really well-produced and, quote, beautifully shot, and you watch an episode that is a departure from the established norm, and you're as fluent in the language of film as Ben, tragically and hilariously, believes himself to be, maybe before you complain in public that it has nothing to do with the show, you ask yourself the question, why would the creators of the show choose to tell this story at this point in the series? And you take a minute and you think about it and figure some shit out. Nope. Not how Ben operates. Where were all the zombies? What's this got to do with the plot of the show? And he's supposed to be one of the smart ones. Why are conservatives, even the so-called smart ones, so bad at this sort of thing? If I had to guess, and I don't, but I'm going to anyway, it's probably a combination of two main factors. The first is the assumption that their opinions represent the general consensus, that most people agree with them, think like them, and see the world the way they do. Operating from this assumption and being unable or unwilling to question this assumption causes them to miss the intended points of lots of things. It can not only lead them to grossly misinterpret the political themes of a work or miss the fact that political themes are there to begin with, it can also leave them oblivious to things like sarcasm and satire. There's an article by Alyssa Rosenberg published in the Washington Post in 2014 that looks at this phenomenon. Remember the Colbert Report, the show which Stephen Colbert hosted as a fictionalized version of himself, a satire of a Fox News-style right-wing pundit? Rosenberg references a 2009 study by researchers at Ohio State which found that conservative viewers of the Colbert Report were more likely to believe that Colbert was not giving a satirical performance, but actually meant the often outrageous things he said. The article also references a similar phenomenon from a previous generation, All in the Family, and the fact that conservatives were much more likely to miss the point that we're not meant to agree with Archie Bunker's reactionary right-wing opinions, but instead to find them ridiculous and laugh at them. Now, to be unduly fair, with All in the Family, it's a bit more excusable than with the Colbert Report, because even though he's a fool and his conservative beliefs are frequently the butt of the joke, Archie Bunker is not a one-dimensional character. He is a reactionary and a bigot, but he is also humanized both by the writing of the show and by the remarkable performance of Carol O'Connor. The creators of All in the Family, one of my favorite shows, at its best it was better than any other show that's ever been on television, I think, don't want us to respect Archie's political beliefs and opinions, but they do want us to empathize with him as a human being. If you're a conservative and you watch a show like that with the assumption that most people see the world the way you do, for you, empathizing with Archie will automatically include respecting his beliefs because you share those beliefs. And it doesn't occur to you that the show is challenging you or mocking you for those beliefs. I would file that as an explanation, but not an excuse. The second factor is a more basic observation, and it's that a lot of folks with a conservative worldview are shallow people, and consequently they have shallow, obvious interpretations of the media they consume. They don't watch movies or TV shows or read books or listen to music in ways that allow for depth and nuance because they don't see the world that way. They see the world in flat, simple, clearly delineated terms. The world, as perceived through a conservative worldview, is a series of binaries. Right and wrong, good and evil, true and false, male and female, win and lose, us and them. That's why someone like Ben Shapiro can be unimpressed by a work like Long, Long Time, an episode of a zombie show that doesn't have any zombies, and which is connected to the larger story of the series through theme and character and foreshadowing rather than simply being part of the literal linear progression of the plot. Perceiving, understanding, and appreciating those elements requires curiosity and imagination and interpretation, and conservatism does not teach people to develop or value such qualities. That's why someone like Ian Miles Chong can get to be whatever the fuck age he is. I'm going to guess at least mid to late 40s without realizing that RoboCop, one of the most noted, influential, and obvious satires of 1980s popular cinema, is political. Of course he didn't pick up on that. He's a simple-minded person with a simple-minded concept of the world and a simple-minded appreciation of art. None of this is unique to conservatives. I want to make sure I acknowledge that because that's almost always the response from conservatives, isn't it? Reflection, projection, accusations of hypocrisy. Oh, conservatives think in terms of simple binaries, but you're saying conservatives have poor media comprehension and progressives are great at it. Sure sounds like a simple binary to me. That's not what I'm saying. Operating from faulty assumptions, resisting challenges to our beliefs and values, viewing the world in simplistic terms that don't represent reality but make us more comfortable, we're all susceptible to those things. We're all guilty of those things to a certain degree. But people who subscribe to conservative ways of thinking seem more susceptible. And I think the factors I've been describing contribute to that. Holding a more tolerant, open-minded worldview doesn't make you immune to those factors. Progressives can be oblivious too. Things go over the heads of progressives too. We're not always as sharp as we'd like to be. And though I find it very difficult to accept, and I'm still not convinced it's actually true, that even includes me. Curiosity, thoughtfulness, a willingness to challenge yourself and question your assumptions, valuing and nurturing those qualities in yourself won't guarantee that you'll never miss the point of a movie or a TV show or a book or a song, but it will make it a lot less likely that you'll ever do something as embarrassing as attempting to dunk on someone for thinking RoboCop is political, or say something as staggeringly asinine as actually Star Trek isn't political very often. Also, you know what else can help with that? Paying attention. I rewatched all the episodes and it's only political 15% of the time. Okay, now pull your head out of your ass and try it again.